Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video, and in this video, I'm actually joined by the legendary Robbie Thompson. For those who don't know, Robbie's known for his work in comics such as Spider-Man slash Deadpool, Meet the Skrulls, Solo, Poe Dameron, Doctor Strange, Silk, Venom, Space Knight, Spidey, Teen Titans. So much, probably a million more comics. More
I think you got
recently,
them all.
yeah, that's basically them. But he's also gotten to work on TV shows such as Supernatural, and more recently, the long awaited Suicide Squad. I actually have issue one
Right.
and issue four here, and I've absolutely been loving this series. A review will be coming soon, where I sing Robbie praises. But thank you so much, Robbie, for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Getting a chance to chat with you and talk comics. I'm having a great day. How are you?
It's going to be brilliant. Ed, I'm doing great, even better now. I've been looking forward to this all week. Each
Likewise.
day I've been doing more research, reading comics for the sake of this interview. I'm too kind. We're off for the summer. So I sacrifice some of my hard earned time
I
reading
appreciate it.
comics.
I
Don't
appreciate it.
thank me. It's my duty. No, absolutely. And you're a legendary writer. You've done so much great stuff constantly. But so first off, let's talk the Suicide Squad. Issue 4 came out recently enough, and this
That's
was
right.
a
Yeah.
crazy issue. So much good stuff happened here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So before we get into the basics of Suicide Squad, first let's talk about how'd you got into comics. So growing up, were you a comic book fan, or like how'd you even get into comics?
So I got into comics. I guess technically it started with here in the States, we had a show called The Electric Company, and it was like a PBS public broadcasting. It would be on between like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. And they had little like vignettes of Spider-Man. And they would kind of shoot it like live action, but they would have like little comic book panels, and it said Spidey. Like it
Yeah.
was like Spidey and his stories or something like that. And like he would fight like the Yeti or something like that. So my brother and I knew who Spider-Man was before we really kind of knew what comics were. My brother is older than I am, and he
Yeah.
got into comic books, and he used to use comics to kind of help teach me how to write, to read. And because I was, like a little guy, and he would show me the pictures and then show me the words. And so that was kind of my entree into comics, and comics were kind of in our world. I think the first time I remember buying a comic was as a little kid. I'd use my, allowance from washing dishes and mowing the lawn or whatever, and I got them off of a spinner rack, like you see
Yeah.
here, because we would just get them at the pharmacy and the drugstore. It was actually, I brought it with me because I knew this is video. This is a recreation of it as like a statue, but this was the first comic I ever bought. It was Fantastic Four
Oh
243,
wow, that's
and I was like,
Galactus.
yes, yeah, and I became lifelong Galactus fan. Love that guy. I mean, who doesn't love a guy who eats planets? And I was just hooked, and I knew, again, like I knew who Spider-Man was, and Incredible Hulk, the TV show, but that was like my first entree. And that issue, as you can see on the cover, like it was everybody versus Galactus, and I was just hooked on comics. I didn't realize like there were things like back issues. like
Yeah.
I thought like the first Fantastic Four was the first one that I bought, like, but then this was actually my first back issue, Fantastic Four 241, which is
No
a
way.
fantastic, it's they go to Wakanda and team up with Black
Awesome.
Panther, and there's like Indiana Jones references, and it was like, I was just hooked from a very, very early age. And then I wanted to be an artist, to be honest with you. And just between you and I and your viewers, I was a terrible, terrible artist, but I tried, and it really taught me a lot about storytelling visually, and telling the story through panels, the moments that happened between panels. And I would sit with my Fantastic Four comics mostly because I was a huge Fantastic Four fan, still am to this day. And I would take panels, and I wouldn't cut them out, but I would copy them and tell my own story with my own dialogue and things like that. And it was very, very clear that I was not meant to be an artist. That is a skill set that I cannot even imagine the amount of hours you have to put in, and I was too lazy. But I always really enjoyed writing, and I thought writing might be the way into it for me. So that's, yeah. So yeah, I've been a comics fan my whole life. How about you? What got you into comics?
Oh, like I think, I've always kind of been a fan of all this like fast superhero stuff. I just never grew
Yeah,
out
yeah,
of it. And it's like and there's so many different comics, and it's weird when you see a comic and you see a name. You don't think no one makes comics, they just
right.
appear.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, that's it. And then it's like there's so many Irish creators, and
Yeah,
that's what really got me into it. Like I used to go to comic book shops because they were awesome because there was
right.
pictures of Batman, Superman
Yeah,
fighting, and then there's all this weird stuff. So slowly I ended up finding out more, and then one day I was like, am I a nerd? Oh my god, yes, I'm a massive nerd because I knew a lot. And then like I start reaching out to Irish creators, and
right.
like I just started this talking about comics. And all my friends think I'm super cool, obviously, as I'm sure that comes
Obviously.
across.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I have to turn away people. Like I say I'm interviewing Robbie Thompson, so give it a break, and then I have
You
to
can't
push
shut that
people.
down. You can't shut that down. I mean, come on.
That's right. But so, and there's just so many different vast comics, and then getting to interview creators,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And like getting to talk to you, this was so kind of you to do this, because I've been a huge
Of
fan of
course.
your
My pleasure.
name, and I've seen the name Thompson. So I was in a
Well,
comic shop.
there's a bunch of us too. There's Kelly Thompson,
Yeah,
there's
that's what I
Zach
was thinking.
Thompson. I made a joke about that in Spider-Man Deadpool, that I was the third best Thompson at Marvel. It's a good name, and has Irish roots on my side of the family, anyways.
Oh, no way.
Is the store you go to, is it Big Bang? Is that a comic shop that you've been to?
I was just there the other day. Yes.
Oh wow, I've always wanted to go there. I follow them on Twitter, and I love the posts that they make, and the way they talk about comics and how comics are marketed, and it just looks like it looks like just one of those stores you want to spend a day in.
Yeah, for my birthday, I've convinced my mom to give me money, so I'm just gonna go to that shop.
Oh, there you
Because
go.
I was like, I'm sitting there like, oh, here, look at all this. So if you do ever come, if you're looking for some comics to sign, I have some product placement here conveniently. So let's get into it. The Suicide Squad.
When I come to Dublin, I'm definitely going there, and I will message you, and we'll hang out and talk comics in real life.
That would be so cool. But so let's talk Suicide Squad. First, before we get to issue 4, let's talk issue 1. This was such a great read. It's so great. You really have a great understanding of the Suicide Squad. I'm not just saying that. The cover immediately caught my eye. So how did the Suicide Squad come about? How were you reached about this? Or
Sure. Funnily enough, a former Suicide Squad writer I worked with on Supernatural, his name's Adam Glass, and he did the Suicide Squad way back. He actually was part of the team that brought Harley Quinn on the book.
Wow.
Before she was like a staple in that series. He had reached out to me because he was really busy, and he was working on Teen Titans at the time, and he was like, "Hey, I've got this all kind of plotted out. Would you want to come co-write this with me to help me kind of land this plane?" Because he was ending his run. And I was like, of course, I'd love to. I grew up loving Teen Titans, and I'd started working in comics at DC, but I hadn't really worked there much since. And so it felt like a good fit. I love the editorial there. They're really smart and great. And we had, there was some editorial change going on, and then Mike Cotton got on the book, and Mike at the end of that run was like, hey, because I eventually kind of started writing the last bits of Teen Titans by myself. He was like, hey, this is fun. Do you want to work on another DC book? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like who do you got? And he mentioned Suicide Squad, and they sent me, I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but I'm going to show it to you anyways. Who cares, right? What's the worst?
Who cares? The millions of people watching this. So
he sent me this PDF. I don't know if you can see this, but it was kind of like their pitch for what the Suicide Squad could be in 2021. And so it's like, it's like a real Task Force X top secret, to Amanda Waller, CC, President of the United States.
Awesome.
And it's kind of like a general idea of what they wanted to do with, I mean, not to get overly technical, but like with the brand, but also the characters that they wanted to have. Obviously, as you know, there's a new massive Suicide Squad movie coming out, and they wanted to capitalize on some of that, particularly with some characters that hadn't really been featured in Suicide Squad. And Suicide Squad has a great, as you well know, history of kind of taking, obscure characters and kind of featuring them and kind of platforming them, and then hopefully they go on to do other things. So yeah, he sent me this PDF and just said like, hey, tell me what you think. And it was a basic bare bones of where they wanted to take the team, some team members. And I thought, this is great. And so I wrote up a pitch based on that. And then we kind of traded it back and forth. And then before I knew it, we were off and running. And, because of, the lockdowns and COVID and things like that, we actually were able to work well in advance. Usually in comics, and we talk about like the runway you have before the plane takes off, and usually it's very short. With this one, not just because of the lockdown, but also we knew what we wanted to do well in advance. We had a lot of runway to kind of really kind of map things out. So it's been really fun. I think issue 4 is on stands now. I'm writing issue 8 now, and so it's been really fun to kind of. That's why I was like, when you were like issue 4 is, I was like, okay, good, don't spoil issue 5.
You're still trying to keep note of all of this, but the lineup on this book is fantastic. There's a few characters at the top. Talon. You're probably wondering who is Talon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I knew you'd get that. I'm super ashamed of that joke. I came up with that on the car ride home yesterday, and oh my god, it's so bad. But if you read the book, you understand that.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
There's also a Peacemaker, a Phenom Freak,
right.
a few more characters. But so did you get to choose the lineup?
So Mike Cotton and Bixie, who are my editors on the book, they had a sense of. I'm trying to think. It was definitely Peacemaker, definitely Talon, definitely Nocturna, and
Yeah.
Superboy. And then we just started kind of talking about characters who we could add. We wanted to create some characters as well, not just because we wanted to kill them off, but also to kind of add some new people to the DC universe. And then we kind of went through, and I just actually got. I can't reach it; it's too heavy. But I got the omnibus of the DC Who's Who, and we
Oh,
just kind of go through that and kind of think, well, here's a character that's got a cool power, a cool skill set. And one of the things we really wanted to do was evoke, some of the things that John Ostrander did, and some of that them kind of hang out and like see them in more, for lack of a better, like domestic situations, like having lunch or doing laundry or whatever. But another thing was like he had like great, like he had the gag with like who was hitting people in the face with pies and things like
yeah, he
that.
touched on that.
And
Yeah.
like so yeah, we had like a gag, like our gag like that was like the drummers in Spinal Tap, all the fantastic teleporter coming in. I can't say who it is in issue 7, but I think I posted this online. Issue 7 is the greatest cover in the history of DC Comics. Once you see it, you'll
Wow.
understand. We have a new cast member coming. He's beloved, at least from my childhood. I don't know if everyone else's childhood, but yeah, we kind of wanted to do that. And in terms of rounding the team out, we looked for the great thing about Suicide Squad, and Ostrander touched on that in his interview with you, is like a lot of team books you're looking for what brings them together, but like this is a team of people that like they hate one another, they hate being here, they want to get out, and so you're
Yeah.
looking for people who can kind of bring different elements. And the people that they had at the forefront early on were people like Peacemaker. Obviously, he's being portrayed as by John Cena in the upcoming James Gunn movie. We're all super excited about that, and he was a character that we thought, oh, this would be an interesting, person on the Suicide Squad, a guy who's so obsessed with peace he's willing to kill for it. It's just a fun, sort of push pull. And
Mm.
then we knew, for example, we wanted to put Bloodsport in the book, although he doesn't arrive until issue 5, and
Yeah,
he's been
that's
part of
right.
the group, but you'll see. Yeah, but you'll see him coming up. And then yeah, we just kind of have been kind of adding and going here and there. I think the big character that I was the most excited about, it wasn't my idea to bring him on the book, but when we started talking about where we wanted to go with the character, was Superboy. I
Yeah.
just think he's a great character, has a great history, and it's always fun in these kind of books, where you have a team of baddies, when you have someone that is definitely a good guy, and is really
Mhm.
conflicted about what they're doing. So yeah, that's been fun. But no, I would say it was like 3/4 of the lineup was kind of already on deck before I joined the book, and then we've kind of worked together to round out the team.
Yeah, and there's so many like cool things about the comic, and I love like the dynamics between the characters. But yeah, you brought up Superboy. He was an inclusion
Yeah,
that had me like, oh my god, Superboy is part of the
yeah.
Suicide Squad. That's so good. But so getting to include him is it kind of hard for you because I'm not sure how to phrase this, but he's kind of good. So when you put someone good among these basically
Yeah.
villains, how do you portray that? So is it tough for you kind of having this really great character and trying to fit him in?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough in a good way. I mean,
Yeah.
what you're always looking for as a writer is like who's going to bring conflict to a group, and having a team of villains that are completely fine killing whomever, and have no no moral compass. Putting someone who does have a moral compass, and also someone who very clearly, I mean, he states it throughout the book, he's not supposed to be there. He's not supposed to be a part of this, and so that was really exciting to bring somebody into that group. It can be challenging because you have to remind yourself, like it's like, hey, he would save the guards at Arkham Asylum. He wouldn't
Yeah.
just be punching. He'd be punching through walls to kind of get them out, and then it's led to some really great moments. With one of my favorite characters in the book, which is Amanda Waller.
Oh
She's
yeah.
very clearly has messed with Superboy in a way that will reveal itself at the end. Well, I guess hinted at the end of issue 6, but we really unpack it in the annual that comes out after that.
Okay.
So a lot of the sort of mystery about what's going on, or what's wrong, I should say, with Superboy. But that was also made it sort of, I don't want to say easier, but it made it make more sense because he's fighting, his teammates, but he's also fighting something that's going on inside his own mind. And
Yes.
so I think that sort of led us to have some really fun character moments and character dynamics as he's kind of gotten to know different characters, on the team, and you can start to see, I think, by issue 4 that there's different like little cliques, within the group, as I think any group group would have. So yeah. No, I wouldn't say it's hard, but it's hard in a good way. It's hard
Yeah.
because it leads to good story and good character moments.
It absolutely does. And I especially love the dynamic you've had between Peacemaker and Superboy. And you can see the tension
Yeah,
kind of building there. So what's
yeah.
that been like getting to write for that? Because I love that.
That's one of those moments, as a writer, you always try to just follow what the characters are saying. That's one of those things I think that writers say. It sounds kind of cheesy, but like at a certain
Yeah.
point, the characters start kind of talking. And early on in the script, I think it was issue 2, I can't remember. It's all a blur and I'm old. But there was a moment where it's like they just kind of got into it with each other, and it was just very clear that it was going to be a really fun dynamic. And
Absolutely.
also because they both don't know what's going on with Superboy, Peacemaker is so delusional that he thinks he's really in charge of the Suicide Squad, even though he's a prisoner and has a
Yeah.
bomb in his head that can be blown up. And that just felt like a fun sort of foil for a character like Superboy, who is, as you said, he's a good guy. He's there to do the right thing and to do good. So I definitely think it was one of those moments early on. I was like, oh, these guys are going to be fun to write. The dynamic there that we had talked about in sort of launching the book just kind of came alive in this one scene, and then it was like you're kind of off to the races once they start talking. It's like you have to kind of catch up with them. It's fun.
Yeah, and another dynamic I loved was between Talon, William Cobb, and
Yeah.
Culebra, or Solebra. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Um,
Culebra, you got it.
Culebra.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how they kind of have that Chewbacca Han Solo thing where only she can understand them, and I thought
Right.
that was so funny. But yeah, no, so that was another one I loved. That was between
Yeah.
Talon and yeah, so that was really great.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so I was like to get to also work with that.
With Talon, it was interesting because obviously the Court of Owls and all that stuff is really really there's a lot of rich history there. But when you sort of start to kind of assemble your team, your editors, in my case, Mike and Vixie, they'll kind of tell you like, hey, here's what's going on with them. So like you may have a snapshot of what you thought but Talon is kind of crazy at this point. And so that felt like, oh, okay, well, if you're do a Dirty Dozen kind of thing, you always need your Telly Savalas crazy character. But then it led to a conversation about like, well, what do we want for him in terms of the story? Where do we want him to go? And you'll see at the end of the annual what's really kind of going on with him. We kind of hint at it in issue 4 because
Yeah.
he's just been saying, as you pointed out, who, like he's this maniac, but he isn't. He's playing crazy. He's kind of playing
Yes.
the crazy version of Possum, or the Possum version of crazy. I don't know where that analogy goes, but yeah, he's really fun because he's early on we talked about like we wanted all the characters because they have these. They're some of them are bad guys, some of them are sort of in the gray area. We wanted them all to have some kind of a secret that they were kind of holding. And whether or not that affects the actual plot didn't really matter. It was more for a sense of like, oh, okay, like this is what's driving them in certain scenes.
Oh yeah.
So with Talon, when we figured that out, it was like, oh, okay, well, great. Well, now we know where he's going. And like I said, we kind of hinted that we opened that thread up at the end of or in the middle of issue 4 when Red X is kind of like, I don't think you're being on the level with everybody. And he's like, oh crap, you're right. But then we pick that thread back up pretty clearly in 7, and he becomes a big part of we kind of broke it into halves, like it's the first 6 plus the annual, and then we're going to do 6 more in another annual, and he's like a big part of what's going to go down in Amanda Waller's crew.
Yeah, and that was such a good inclusion. When I immediately saw the lineup, I was like, brilliant. There's another character that I like. This is just a fanboy question, but the film
Yeah.
freak, he is so
Oh yeah.
cool. I love him so much. And you're going to catch his hands for, I won't say
I'm
what
so
happened.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Screw you, Rob. No, I hate you. No, money message. Oh, yes. And he was such a cool character. And I don't, maybe if you haven't read issue 1, click
Oh,
off
you can
now.
spoil it. It's fine.
Oh,
It's
brilliant.
fine. It's
Okay.
public. Yeah.
So he had one of the greatest deaths I've ever seen in comics.
Yeah.
The line, and I was like talking to my sister, I was like, hey, look at that. Isn't this awesome? But he says, that's all, folks. I'm not sure if you can see it clearly there. That was such a great line. So did you try to come up with quotes for that character? Film quotes?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because so obviously you know the character really well, and it's a character I love. It's probably a character who I am in real life. I'm always like quoting movies because I'm a big
Yeah.
movie maniac. But we did know early on that we wanted to kill some people that were at least somewhat recognizable, so that people knew that this was a true blue Suicide Squad book.
Yeah.
And when I think it was Mike who brought him up, And I was like, perfect. That's like me getting to kill me in the book. And then we actually had to come up with the lines that he said so that we could have them cleared from a legal standpoint. Because if
Oh
you have
yeah,
full movie quotes, it's like it's a weird thing like with songs too. Like the more of the quote you have, the more liability you, or exposure you have.
I
So
see.
there were a couple times where we were like, oh, we can't use this one. And obviously that's all folks is Warner's. And so it was all kind of under the umbrella. So that one was fine to use. But he was fun to briefly write. And it was also sort of a fun character to have, you know, again, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's perfectly described.
Yeah.
Culebra and Talon have kind of a Chewbacca Han Solo. When you have that kind of, or R2D2 C3PO, I guess, when you have the character who kind of has to translate for the other and only kind of speaks in their, you know, coded language, it always leads to kind of fun comedic moments. Because we wanted to really you know, evoke a lot of, you know, that tone that Ostrander found, which was like really high stakes action, but there was a lot of humor in his book, you know,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that sort of gallows humor, I think is really great in keeping with this with a title like this.
And so I imagine you got to create a few characters for this, or are these all like? Because I know Film Freaks obviously pre-created,
Yeah,
but was there a few other characters you got to kind of create for this Suicide
yeah,
Squad?
we got to I got to co-create with Eduardo and Culebra and a couple of the teleport every teleporter that we've killed is is definitely was a co-creation, brief
Keymaster.
co-creation. Yeah, Keymaster.
Branch is
There's a
my
character.
favorite character. I love Branch so much.
Yeah, Branch. Yeah, Branch comes back.
Oh
I
my! Did
can't.
you create Branch, right? Or
Yeah,
is
we
he?
co-created Branch with so yeah, hopefully hopefully he survives. No promises.
That's what
No
I'm
promises.
thinking, man. Because he just
Uh,
does not want to be there. I was like, oh, he's gonna get his
yeah.
head blown off in
N-
issue 2. But
The
luckily, so
the idea for him was we were talking about like oh gosh, Saving Private Ryan. Jeremy Davies has a character he's very obviously like scared about the combat and stuff like that, and was like, oh, like we should have a character who could be very valuable to the team, but we completely terrified. But he's back, and I think it's issue 6, I think, which is currently being drawn. But yeah, it was fun to create those characters, and we have a couple more coming. There's some people that you'll find out that work with Amanda Waller on the more sort of administrative side, but they'll have
yeah,
bigger parts to play in the back half. And then yeah, it's fun to kind of get to do a little bit of both. Like we want to find that balance between, you know, because a lot of times when you create a character or co-create a character for Suicide Squad, people are just waiting for them to get blown up because it's like you're just creating a character to kill them off. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why, like with Culebra, like we've been trying to, like, you know, I've been trying to keep her alive as long as I can. At the same time, you know, it's also fun because, you know, the stakes of a book like this are always so high, you know, because not everybody's going to come back from these missions. Like we're about to do a two-parter that has them going to the multiverse, and they go to like Earth 3, and then
Yes.
we're going to do a two-parter. Well, it's during that we'll also be kind of crossing over with Swamp Thing, and then after that, I don't know if this has been announced yet, but we're going to do a little run where we go. Please pardon my language, but we go to hell, the Suicide Squad, and that's going to be a ton of fun. That's issues 7 and 8. I think that gets solicited in like, I don't know, a couple weeks. And again, issue 7, the greatest cover in DC Comics history. So no, it's fun to create those characters and to work with, you know, my fellow, you know, co-creators, you know, the editors and the artists on the book to kind of flesh these characters out, and hopefully we'll down the road be able to get into some of their backstory as well.
Yeah, and so I found myself, because obviously these are straight up villains, like that's the whole point of Suicide Squad. So is it kind of hard for you to make these characters relatable and likable? Because I mean, like I kind of found myself slowly liking William Cobb, aka Town. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
screw you, you killed Bolt. I just had this page on me right now. I was like,
I
yo, screw
know.
you, William Cobb. I hate you, and I hate you as well, Rob. Killed everyone. God damn. Like, I mean, you shouldn't do that in a book like this. You know, this is just a book where everyone lives happily.
Right. They should all hang out and make sandwiches.
Yeah, that's just full 24 pages of that. What's wrong with that? But you know, so is it tough for you to kind of like make these characters likable who are straight out villains? Because if you can't have someone, you know, shooting someone and then saying, haha, look at me, I'm so great, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. I think it's, again, it's the good challenge, and it's the fun of a book like this is, you know, I always like in stories where the bad guys aren't just the bad guy, like they have some kind of a history or a reason why they did what they did or became what they became. And look, it's fun to write a sociopath once in a while, like a Joker who's just, you know,
Yeah.
maniac and isn't going to be redeemed. But in that sort of, again, classic, Dirty Dozen, Ostrander kind of a vibe, we wanted to have these people be, three-dimensional characters, and yeah, they do some things that are pretty bad, and they also do some things that are good. And I think, if you're a fan of the first movie that came out, and it looks like, I haven't seen the new one, but I can't wait. It looks like they found a nice balance there, where it's less about whether they're good or bad, and it's more about, can you relate to them? Do they have, are they good, or are they bad? Or are they going to do the right thing when pushed?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, is my mic okay? Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Oh,
I can hear you
brilliant,
great.
because some of my interviews are a bit muted, so I'm hoping doesn't happen. But so another character that, I'm sorry for bringing up so many different things. That my apology.
Yeah, of
But a
course.
character you got to work on that I really love how you're working with him, and we'll talk about issue 4 next. But you do something with him, do. But you got to work on Rick Flag.
Oh yeah, Rick
What
Flag.
was that? But you got to do quite a bit of work on Rick Flag, and I love that kind of. You're obviously building tension, because like you can understand both points. Like Amanda Waller's like, "Screw this, man! I hate losing."
Yeah.
And Rick Flag's like, and there's one line I have to commend you on. I believe I mentioned it in my first message to you. It was darkness to put out darkness.
Yeah.
You said like, and I love that line so much. There's some more brilliant pages here. But what's been like getting to write for Rick Flag?
Rick's great. I mean, Rick is also, he's an interesting linchpin to every single, I think, run of the Suicide Squad, dating back to the old days. And I think, what we wanted to try to do is, Rick Flag very often to me is sort of like the moral compass, for, there he is, look at that handsome devil.
Brilliant. Darkness put out darkness. But yeah, so he's kind of the linchpin, like you were saying.
Yeah, and he's the moral compass of the book. And so we felt like we wanted him on the book, and then we wanted to take him out really quickly to show that there wasn't going to be a moral compass to this book. But as you see at the end of issue 4, Rick Flag is out. Amanda Waller kind of throws him in Belle Reve, or Belle Reve, however you're supposed to pronounce it. No one will tell me. But threw him in jail, and he's escaped. And who let him out is going to be a little bit of a mystery that we unpack as well. And Rick is definitely not out of the book. He is definitely coming back, and he's coming back with a vengeance pretty quickly. And you'll see again in the annual what he has been up to since escaping in issue 4. So no, he's great. He's, again, what's always fun about these characters, and I think it's in every iteration of Suicide Squad, is that these are morally compromised people, who, as you said, they have done bad things, and some of them are outright bad guys, but they're put in a position to do something good. And that sort of, push-pull and a character's motivation is really fun to dig into. Yeah. And with Rick, he's supposed to be the good guy, but like, Rick is a military dude. He's made some tough calls and has lived in a gray area as well throughout his career. So to be able to add him to the mix early on, again, part of the reason we added him early on was to take him out. But we always knew that he was going to be a force in the back half of that first year. So yeah, if you love Rick Flag, he will be back, tan, rested, and ready in the annual, which comes out after issue 6. And
wow,
he definitely has a bone to pick. If you've read the Future State stuff, which was sort of like a preview of what might come, obviously Rick Flag is featured there, and so it's not a spoiler to say that he's coming back. But how he gets there and the team that he assembles is going to be fun to unpack.
Yeah, so does he go find the love of relish and become the new Condiment King?
Yes, he totally. Yes,
I knew it. I bring up Condiment King way too much in my interviews, but he comes up pretty organically. As you
honestly, you can't bring him up enough. Really.
Yeah, no. So this whole video is just a discussion of Condiment King, because he's obviously such a personable character, and he's so complex. You have to really dig into him.
Plus, who doesn't love condiments? It's like if you're making a sandwich or you're having a hot dog or whatever, like you're gonna put some condiments on there. And I think he's somebody who can bring everybody together. We can all agree that, like,
aren't we all? The real Condiment King was the friends we made on the way. Absolutely.
Or the condiments we ate along the way.
That's right. But that's basically confirmation that Rick Flag, Red X, is Condiment King, because why not?
Yes.
And speaking of
you
Red
heard
X,
it here first.
Yeah, you hear that, Tim Sheridan? That's basically canon. But I'm guessing, obviously not. This does not represent DC in any way, so don't sue me, no one listen. But we have issue 4 right here. This is your newest issue. So many cool things happen here. But first, let's talk about Red X. Now, Red X is a character who's, I guess you could say, he's recent enough, probably in the last year or so. Yeah. But he's a character we don't know the identity to. There's been a few theories, but he's actually written by Tim Sheridan. So you know, and one thing I want to talk about, he's like, we don't know who he really is. So for
Right.
you, is it, and I don't imagine you would know either. So is it tough for you to kind of write and, you know, because you don't know if you're writing for someone like Batman, you
Right.
say, okay, Bruce Wayne would say this, but you're
Yeah.
writing for Red X, you can't say he'd say this because you don't know. So is that tough for you?
It was definitely a challenge when we first started talking about, but DC has a great editorial team that's really they really are in constant communication. And so what my editor and Tim Sheridan's editor did, that we put together much like this, like a little video summit where we
Oh,
talked about what we wanted the crossover to do. Tim has a very clear plan of what he's doing with that character and what he's doing with that book and how he wants it all laid out. And so we had a very long discussion about different ways we could kind of pass the baton to one another. And then it kind of fell just in the batting order. Like there was just a lot of dialogue for Red X, but it was great because because we had such open communication. I could hand in my scripts to my editors, they could share it with the Teen Titans Academy editors, they could share it with Tim was gracious enough to look through and say like, oh hey, like this might be a little too a specific line here, or maybe pull back here, or ooh, I love this, more of that. And so it was kind of like I joked in an interview recently that the identity of Red X is actually Tim Sheridan, like
yeah.
he is Red X. But it was to your point, like you kind of know how Batman talks, but I could kind of talk to Red X, and say like, is this what you would sound like? So
Oh,
being able to kind of have that, and now that we're doing this crossover with the Swamp Thing crew, like we've been in constant communication with them. So it's like again, it's like calling up Swamp Thing and say like, does this sound like you? And he's like, yeah, it sounds like me. Great, goodbye. And instead it's just with the creative team. So being able to have that coordinated on the DC editorial side of things with Tim was invaluable. And it definitely made, I had some trepidation, because of the difficulty that you're talking about, like, well, I don't know who this character is, and the identity is a mystery, and I want him to be able to say certain things. Is he playful, is he not? But being able to have that initial conversation gave me the confidence to at least take a first pass at it. And then, like I said, editorial and Tim were able to go through the script and kind of say we don't want to say this because it might hint at that, or we want to say this because we want to hint at that, or this could be a red herring, in terms of exactly all the stuff you're talking about, because we want people to be guessing who this character is. So it was definitely a challenge up front, but because there was so much transparency amongst all the creatives, it ended up being not only easy but like a ton of fun. Like he's a fun character to write, especially a character going Amanda Waller. Red X is a guy who thinks like a chess player, several steps ahead.
yeah.
Amanda Waller does too. And we had talked about early in our run we really wanted Amanda Waller to have a loss so that we saw as readers and members that like, hey, like something's off about her game. Like she's clearly, she's kind of like, holding on a little too tight. And so it felt like what a great crossover, opportunity to like bring those two books together, but also put a perfect foil in front of her that she's like, she wanted, a speedster, but then she's like, never mind. I want this one instead. And she got like someone dangled the car keys and she got really excited. And that
Yeah.
felt like out of character for her in a good way, so that it would kind of make us go, hey, what's she really trying to accomplish here, and what are her real goals? So it was fun. It was fun to be able to do that, and it was fun to just do sort of one of those kind of like Prison Break kind of stories.
Yeah, and we've also, it's been revealed obviously that he's Detective Chimp. We all know that just based on his proportions.
Yes, 100%.
It has to be. It's either Condiment King or Detective Chimp.
Yeah,
There's no middle. It's one of
it's
them.
one or the other. It's one or the other.
I've narrowed it down. So as you can see, I've been told I'm a better detective than Batman. And I have to agree there because it's definitely Detective Chimp. Because have you ever seen Red X, Condiment King, and Detective Chimp in the same room? No.
Never have. I don't think anybody has. I mean, they could
Exactly.
be all the same people. Who knows?
Well, I think, aren't we the real Red X? Wasn't the real Red X the friends we made on the way?
That's
But
100% true.
but issue 4 is so cool. And so
Thank you.
the decision to kind of lock up Red X, was that something you came on with very earlier on? Because there's one panel, and I'm sure you get this a lot, but it's the coolest thing in the book where it's like 50 million chains wrapped around him.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, no, so did you kind of
That came-
decide to lock him up straight away?
Yeah, that came out of our discussion because we thought, we knew that the action was going to be like the sort of more, fighting out in the open was going to be in Tim's book. And then we thought, wouldn't it be interesting if yeah, there they are. Look at that madness. Wouldn't it be interesting to see him? I know, it's so great. Wouldn't it be great to see them kind of in their own element, seemingly safe, in the prison, but then having, this sort of fox in the hen house, so to speak. And it just felt like an organic thing. And, we talked about like, it's like Rorschach saying, I'm not trapped in,
You're trapped in here with me.
you're trapped in here with me. Like we wanted that kind of a vibe from the story. Yeah, look at him kicking him right in the biscuit.
Oh,
That's
hate that. Oh, is that cleaning the biscuit? Damn, tough
yeah, I think it
break. You're
is.
you're
Yeah,
not giving
that's right.
anyone any sympathy on this book.
No, no. So no, it came out of a discussion. I think one of the first discussions, because we were kind of trying to figure out what events would land in which book, and also trying to make sure that if for some reason you didn't pick up Suicide Squad, you could still piece it together in Teen Titans Academy, and vice versa. Yeah, there they are. Look at
Yeah,
this.
and so like there's so many different cool stuff, and there's some more brilliant pages here, as you can see.
Yeah,
And they meet
Eduardo.
in the laundry room, which is like awesome because that's what I want. I want to see these people talking in the laundry room.
Yeah.
Colbert making jokes at the back. But there's one page at the end that I really loved, and it's just such a smart page. I'll see if I can find it there. It's the oh yeah, and one of your toys got away. It's just the way it's formatted. That's such
Oh,
a
that's
cool
all.
thing.
That's all Eduardo. Like
Yeah.
I think I'd laid that out as like 4 panels, and then he, so artists will send you like their roughs and their layouts and stuff like that, and he sent that along. And we were all just like thrilled. It was just such a cool. It was such a cool way to end the book, and also like it was just a great stamp for like Red X as a character. It was just yeah, that's all. That's all him. He's a brilliant artist and a great collaborator.
Yeah, and everything about this book is just so good. You're doing an absolutely fantastic job. I cannot
Thank
wait
you
to
very
read
much.
issue 5. And in issue 5, I don't think it's much of a spoiler because it literally says at the end of issue
Yeah,
4. Can I say who we're going to be
yeah,
seeing? Oh, we're going to meet Bloodsport in the new issue.
yes.
So
You
the like,
100% means
and he's
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport is so cool. From what I've heard, I only found about like most people, I only heard about him because, of course, a little known film by a little known director, freaking James Gunn, working on it.
The
Um,
Maestro.
yeah, and so getting to work on Bloodsport. So
Yeah,
what's that going to be like? But obviously, don't tell us too much. But just was it fun
sure.
to get to write for him?
Yeah, to be honest, he was a character that I didn't know as much about.
Mm.
And so, one of the great joys of working in comics is someone gives you an assignment and then your homework is to go read comics. So I read a bunch of old, I mean, right, the dream. I read a bunch of old, comics that featured Bloodsport. And then, one of the real advantages of working on this particular book, and we started writing it before the first trailer dropped, but like knowing who the cast was visually, and obviously like I don't know anything about the Suicide Squad movie. I'm just can't wait to see it. I've watched that trailer like 500 times.
Same, yeah.
I would listen to that Dirty Work song on repeat when I would go for walks. It's been the soundtrack of writing the Suicide Squad, so it's the movie's now informing the comics. So I don't know anything about that, but knowing that like the voice of some of these characters would be portrayed by Idris Elba, or obviously Viola Davis had already performed in the first Suicide Squad movie as Amanda Waller, and Margot Harley Quinn's not in the book, but like Margot Robbie, and then the great John Cena as Peacemaker. It was such a great choice.
Yeah, I can't see him as Peacemaker. I can't see him as
You
Peacemaker.
can't see that?
No, get it. You can't see me. Oh my god, I apologize, everyone watching. I've made too many puns here. I'm really sorry.
No,
I
not
never
enough.
made this
We'll,
much
we'll get more. My apologies for being slow in the uptake.
fun.
But no, it was actually an advantage because like some, especially characters like Peacemaker, but also Bloodsport, who I didn't know, but I'm familiar with those actors, and had a sense just by like the casting of that. I was like, oh okay, like I think. And then when I did see the trailer, I was like, oh man, this is amazing. Like
Yeah.
I really feel like the portrayal is so spot on. The tone is so spot on. It really does feel like an Ostrander comic come to life, which is like, again, I can't wait to see the movie. But no, it was fun to do the research, and we had to kind of finesse a little bit, because there's so many different continuities, and like which Bloodsport, it's like all that kind of stuff. So once we kind of settle on it, and you'll see in that issue, it's not a spoiler or anything like that. It's very much told from his point of view. He's the narrator of that issue, and you'll
Awesome.
get a brief origin of him, like we usually do on our first page, and then kind of what he's been up to. I think he says in the comic, like 3 or 4 pages in, like he's kind of because he has this ability to have weapons teleported to him, he's kind of a one-man Suicide Squad. And so he's been tasked by Amanda Waller to go to other Earths and pick up, potential squad members. And you're going to find out that some of the squad members, that are on our squad are maybe not from our Earth. That's a little tease for coming attractions. But he's really fun to write. Like he's got a really interesting backstory, and we delve into that there. And then he'll be on the team pretty much, moving forward after that. Issue 5 is sort of a tee up of what he's been up to. Issue 6 is the horrible consequences of that, and then issue 6 is a really big cliffhanger, which I'm really excited about. People are seeing, and then,
Oh,
like I said, the annual is really going to kind of unpack some of the stuff that we've been teasing, both with Superboy and Rick Flag, and you'll start to see also, what Amanda Waller has really been up to, and how that lines up with the I have them right here, with the Future State. Look at that, Future State
yes, we're
issue
getting to
6,
that.
not before. So yeah, all that stuff will kind of be teased out. But no, it's been a blast to work on that character. All the characters are fun because, as you pointed out, like when you're morally compromised like these people are, like it leads to some interesting choices, and people making mistakes and not being perfect. It's not like you're writing Justice League or the Avengers and or Batman where everyone's like perfect. Like these are these are far from perfect individuals. So that's a lot more fun to write.
Except for Branch, of course, he is perfect.
Branch is perfect.
He just can't be improved upon. Yeah, but you also
No.
touched it. I heard you said multiverse, different versions. So you basically just
Yeah.
confirmed 1 million Condiment Kings in the next issue. You can't say
Yeah.
anything else. That's just become canonized.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'd be a really interesting question about what does the Condiment King look like on the Earths.
Yeah.
Is he no longer the Condiment King? Is he actually like the meat of the sandwich guy? You know what I
Oh
mean?
my
Like
God.
we don't know. We don't
Don't
know. I
even
guess
joke
we'll find
about
out.
that. Don't even joke if that's worst case scenario. Don't even, please don't. But so you just brought it up there, Future State Suicide Squad. So is this book
Yeah.
kind of a build up to that, or is that set in another universe?
So the way that this was like my first, sort of entree into working on the squad, and the way we were kind of, using it as is like, here is a worst case scenario of what could end up happening. And so as you'll start to see though, if you've read those issues, it'll be pretty apparent, I think pretty clear early on, and I don't think this is a spoiler, that things are hopefully not going to go the way that Amanda Waller had them in those issues. And again, I think you'll see that pretty clearly as Rick Flag becomes more of a staple of our book again, and really starts to kind of push back on what she's doing, and you'll start to see the threads sort of kind of come together of how close she's going to get, and then
Yeah.
we're going to deviate from what's happened in Future State, so that it's not a spoiler or anything like that, but you also start to see that, oh boy, like she's figured out ways around the ways that people are trying to stop her, and that she still is sort of hell-bent on her mission. So it was kind of a way to kind of like, it's like, in the old comics would start with like the Fantastic Four in peril, and it's like 24 hours earlier. It's a bit like that, but because the events aren't set in stone, and because our characters are our characters and are going to make different decisions, you'll start to see them start to kind of unpack that stuff in I think a pretty fun way.
Yeah, and of course, screw you for what you did to Evil Star. Just get that out of the way. No, this whole interview is just me. Screw you for what you did to this one obscure villain.
Keep reading. There's so much more horrible things that.
Thank you. I'm sure it's brilliant. But in that Future State story, there's something I really love. It's your new lineup of the squad, of the Justice Squad. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
Yeah.
I'll read them out. So basically, your Superman
These
is
guys.
of course Superboy. Oh, that's so cool. And
Yeah.
Clayface is Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
And Fisherman is Aquaman, and Clayface is a monster. He's eating people, and it's so great. Flash is Bulk. Wonder Woman is Hypnotic Woman. Batman is, of course, Talon, and Superman is Superboy. So, did you get to choose all those members for your new Justice Squad?
Yeah, we kind of talked it through together. We knew at that point about Bolt, and we thought, well, let's have someone, and that's again sort of where you can start to see that you might wonder, like, well, wait, I thought Bolt was going to be on her team, so how did she get away, or is Waller going to try to get her again, so on and so forth. And then we talked about, we really wanted to have sort of that like iconic Justice League lineup that we all know and love, but what would the weird version of it be? And so we kind of just went down the list, and we were like, okay, we need a Flash, and so that was Bolt, and we needed a Superman, and that's where the first discussion about Superboy came into place. And then obviously with with Wonder Woman, we were like, well, who could we find that is a villain of hers that could sort of masquerade at her? And then we had a great fit there. And with Clayface, Condiment King, that's a Condiment King. And with Clayface, it was we wanted a shapeshifter, and as you'll see, it's teased in that future state, and you start to see it, in the ongoing too. It's like Waller is kind of taking these other versions, either from the multiverse or the bad guy version, like, a Talon or Hypnotic Woman or Clayface, and she's literally molding them into what would look like her version of the Justice League. And it's a little twisted and it's a little weird. But as you see in Future State, like she's tired of saving our world only to have it be put in peril. She's trying to find a world that she could just go save. And that would actually want to be saved. A place that would be really interested in authoritarianism, I guess. And it felt like, it would be a departure for her. Like she wouldn't want a Suicide Squad. She would want the Justice, well, in her case, the Justice Squad. A face for a public face for what she would become. Because Waller, as you know, is a person who kind of works behind the scenes, and this would be her, camera forward and being like, no, I'm the face of this, and this is my team, and they are the face of truth, justice, and the American way. And so it felt like a good way to do that. So we kind of built the team together, and everyone kind of, trying to pick and choose. And then there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes on. This is kind of like the boring part behind the scenes. Like you might have an idea for like, oh, we want this character, but that character is actually busy on another book. So how do we make our version of whatever? You know what I mean? And that kind of led to an organic discussion about like, well, maybe that's what Waller is actually doing. She's making her version of the team. So that way it gave us some creative flexibility so that we wouldn't be beholden to like the Bat Office or the Teen Titans office or whomever it was, and allowed us to kind of blaze our own trail. And then we talked early on about how, because she's looking for these different pieces, it will allow us to go to different corners of the DC universe. So like in the first couple issues, it's like we're in Gotham, we're in the Bat universe, but we're in like this little corner of it. We're in San Francisco, or not San Francisco, is it Manhattan? I can't remember. Wherever Teen Titans Academy is, we're there, and it's like we're going to hell, as I point out, and we're going to Earth 3, and it was a way to kind of let us dip into other comics without having to be so like immersive in terms of crossover that you had to buy like 500 books. If you buy them other books, great, you'll have some enjoyment. Like there is some dialogue in Gotham that are in other Bat comic books that we kind of blended all together, so it does have a feeling of cohesion, but you don't have to have read that book. If you have, it's just kind of a feeling of, oh, this is a built out universe.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like these are just some more my like fanboy questions. I asked this to Rob Williams and John Ostrander, who are two Suicide Squad writers, as I'm sure you know.
Legends.
Yeah, and of course I've interviewed the Trinity. Now I just need to get everyone else sorted. Hopefully one day I can just grab you all together and just lasso you all and then host a panel.
We'll have a squad reunion. Yeah,
of course. And then of course I'll obviously have to plant bombs in your necks just to kind of, just to keep you in check, Oh, Robbie Thompson's gone to the toilet. Goodbye, everyone. But so of course, sorry, I forgot where I was going. Yeah. So if you could see your team, your version of the team, go up against any other team in the history of comic books or films, who would it be? Because I was thinking about this last night. I was like, oh, there's so many you could do.
Here's what I would do. I'm gonna get another prop. Hold on. So this was one of my earliest comics, and I was obsessed with this. It was a crossover. It was X-Men and the Teen Titans.
Oh, is that by Claremont?
Insane.
Is that Chris?
Yes, Claremont and Walt Simonson, and it's amazing. It's like 700 pounds of comic in a whatever it is, 50, 60 page story. It's incredible. This would be my dream. I would want the Suicide Squad versus the X-Men, but I would want a different lineup. I would want like, it's like you got to have this guy, right? Where is he? There he is. Yeah, I mean, you got to have this guy. You put that guy on the squad, Deathstroke.
Oh man, Deathstroke. I always thought he was a pair. He'd be good, but he'd probably slaughter everyone. So. Yeah,
like him. Like it's like him versus Wolverine in this comic. It's amazing. So yeah, I would bring this back. I'd do a sequel to this, but it would be Uncanny X-Men Teen Titans versus the Suicide Squad. That would be my dream project. This is an amazing book though. It's like you can get them in like dollar bins, I'm sure. Like this is a reprint, but it's just gorgeous art and it's a full story. Like look at this awesomeness. There they all are meeting. Oh. I know this is something that could like never happen now because Marvel and DC are in two worlds until one buys the other, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I would say I would probably put them. Who would you want to see him crossover with?
Oh man, now do you think I was thinking when it comes to someone, John said like John Ostrander said maybe if they fought the Justice League, they'd all die immediately
Yeah.
because the Justice League is just like. So I was thinking maybe someone like, the A Team or someone little that made Candle or the Fantastic Four, because I kind of
Oh,
want to
that would
see.
be good.
I kind of see Ben Grimm the Thing go up against Colbera, just
Yeah,
because
I would totally see
it's
that.
just
I would totally see that.
slashing each other. And then Peacemaker versus Reed Richards. There's a few more.
Yeah.
Like there is a few teams in continuity that you could definitely go against. That I'm just trying to think of. So the Teen Titans is a big one, but at the same time, they all have superpowers.
Yeah.
So peace, and they tried to,
Yeah.
as I'm sure you know, they tried to maybe grab someone from the Teen Titans and it didn't end so well.
True.
And it wasn't
Didn't go so
Branch's fault because Branch tried his best. It was everyone else
No,
around.
Branch,
He's doing it wrong.
he was just the wrong place, wrong time. That kid, that poor kid.
He's an angel, and Amanda Waller did him dirty in that one. But would you mind if we just touched on some of your other work besides Suicide
Yeah, of
Squad?
course.
That's
Yeah,
okay?
whatever you need.
Yeah, brilliant. But you also got to do quite a bit of work on one of the greatest. This was actually my introduction to you. This was Star Wars. You got to do Han Solo and Poe Dameron.
Yeah.
So what was
yeah,
that
yeah.
like? Were you a Star Wars fan growing up?
So, Star Wars is the reason I'm literally talking to you, because when I was a little kid, it was the first movie I ever saw in the theater, and I remember going and being very frightened. Star Wars was kind of everywhere at the time, but we hadn't seen the movie, and my mom had gotten us. We called them dolls back then; they're action figures now.
Yeah.
But my mom had gotten what appeared to be my brother a golden man, and I got what appeared to be a trash can because we hadn't seen the movie yet. And then I saw the movie and I was blown away. And obviously R2-D2 is like one of my favorite characters of all time. But I remember very clearly everything about that experience. And I remember afterwards saying, like, who made that and how did they make it? And I just was obsessed with visual storytelling and particularly Star Wars. So years and years later, cut to years and years later, I'm a working writer. And at the time, Heather Antos was an editor on the Star Wars book, and she reached out. We're both from Michigan originally. I'm from Michigan originally. I live in LA now, but I'm from Michigan originally. And she was like, "Hey, would you want to work on a Star Wars book?" And I was like, "Yes." And then it ended up not working out just because of a scheduling thing. But she was great to work with, and I was like, "Oh, I hope I have this opportunity." There was she moved on, and the editors got kind of switched around because Jordan got switched to X-Men, but then I got a call from Mark and Tom, who are in the Star Wars editorial office, and they were like, "Hey, there's a new Star Wars movie coming out. It's Solo, and we want to do a thing where we launch the adaptation and a story that kind of takes place within the story of Star Wars, and then or Solo, and then we want to platform this character who will eventually, go on to do other things." And I was like, "That all sounds great." The only part that I didn't like, and this is what you said, that moment when you realize you're a nerd. I mean, I've known I'm a nerd my whole life, but like, the only part that was a bummer for me was when um, uh, they were like, "Oh, you got to go to Lucasfilm and read the script." And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to do that. That's like going to spoil the movie." I didn't because I hadn't had that opportunity. I'd done one annual with Heather. I did the Poe Dameron annual because Charles Soule had the month off, and I did an issue of that, which was amazing. That was but it was a little less research intensive because Heather knew what she needed from the story, from the ongoing story, because Charles plans out everything very, very meticulously, and so I needed to kind of come in and just sort of hit these little moments. But that was the only intimidating part about that, was when she was like, "Oh yeah, and like Princess Leia's in it," and I was like, "No, I can't." I had to go like lay down for like, because I've been trying to write lines for Princess Leia for like, I don't know,
Oh man.
decades. So that was really cool. And when that book came out, I do admit, like, it's always cool when you see your name on a comic, but when you see your name in the blue font, like it is on all, like that was epic. But no, I got a chance to go back into Star Wars, shortly after that gig, and then we did the solo book, and it was great because I got to work with Will Sliney, and he's a brilliant artist and just a lovely human being, and we became really good friends, and it was wild. Like, I went to the Lucasfilm offices over here in Los Angeles, and you have to sign all this stuff, and like, you have to leave your phone and your keys, and like nothing that takes pictures, and then they hand you the script, and it's like an iPad, but it's like an iPad that's like just for scripts or something. And so like you can't like photograph, you can't do it, like, and so you have to sit there you have to sign in, and then you have to read it, and then you have to hand it over to them, and then like you have to leave, and like, you know, then you can get your phone and your keys back. But I went in, I read the script, I took a bunch of notes, and then yeah, the process of working with Lucasfilm and Marvel was really just awesome. I had a great time. It was a dream come true as a lifelong Star Wars fan. But you know, the Lucasfilm people, you know, Matt Martin and Pablo and Mike and all those guys, like they love Star Wars as much as you and I love Star Wars. Like they're diehard fans, and they're real keepers of the continuity. And to be able to know that, like, oh hey, I can ask where this planet is, or what this ship is, and they'll send me artwork of, like, you know, from like 40 years ago of like the evolution of how that ship came to be. And then to have characters added to the Wikipedia that I got to co-create was
No
just like,
way.
it was a totally wild a wild experience.
They're
I
canon.
very rarely, yeah.
They're
I
canon.
mean,
Wow.
I very rarely, once you start seeing how the sausage is made, and the Condiment King comes in and does his part on the sausages,
Of course.
you can kind of get used to the process. But that was one where I definitely felt like a little kid, you know, playing action figures with my brother. You can't see it, but I literally just got the old Kenner. My best friend gave it to me, the old Kenner Death Star set, which was like the coveted, when I was a kid, was like the coveted set. It's like 3
Awesome.
stories. It has like trash compactor. I never had it as a kid, and he gave me his. But no, as a lifelong fan, it was a real trip to get to work with those people. But I had a blast, and it was great to work on that adaptation and get to tell a little story. If you've seen the movie Solo, there's a bit where he joins the army, and we got to tell the story of what it was like when he joined the army, and what it was like as a recruit and being trained in the Imperial
Yeah.
Empire and all that stuff. And like, to be able to tell uh, a Han Solo story was really cool, but also a Solo story before he's the cool guy that we all love, you know. So a Han Solo who could make mistakes and could be, um, could, you know, be less of the, you know, have all the right answers and all the cool jokes, you know. Was just, that was a real dream come true.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did a brilliant job on Solo.
Oh,
But
cheers.
who are your two favorite Star? Who are your who's your favorite Star Wars character besides, of course, Jar Jar Binks and Boba Fett, who are just the best?
I
Who are
mean,
some of
I
your
love
other?
those guys. I love Jar Jar.
Mr.
Jar
Jar
Jar.
Jar Binks. I bring up him all the time in my interviews. I always have about Jar Jar Binks, and people get so annoyed, but I love him so much.
I love anything Star Wars. I'll actually, you know what, hold on, let me see if I can reach it. Hold on.
Wow, you must be grabbing. So I'm sure that I doubt
This
he's gonna
is
pull out a big Death
so
Star.
my favorite Star Wars character is R2D2. My favorite Star Wars character is R2D2. Hands
Yeah,
down. He's the
has to
greatest.
be.
But I love this guy. This is actually, I'm gonna, you know, share it with you, my original fan art. This is literally paint by numbers from when the movie came out. But I love this guy right here, Max Rebo
Oh
from
no
Jedi,
way! I'm
the band guy
Yeah, Ethan
from
Sachs recently made a post on Twitter and it was like, post a Star Wars gift that sums you up as a person. I posted a picture of Max Rebo and I said,
there
me
you go.
equals Max Rebo. Elaborate no. Max Rebo is so
Yeah.
cool. You really,
I always believed, and it's actually in the extended universe stuff before it all got reset. Like, because I was like, there's no way he died. Like, he got off Jabba's palace. Like, I don't. I believe he lives and is still jamming to this day. But I just love the design. But look, I love anything Star Wars. I really do. Like, I devoured that stuff as a kid. I devoured it as an adult. You know, it was the thing that made me want to get into storytelling. So
yeah.
Star Wars can kind of do no wrong. So to be able to be a very small part of that universe to help shape me as a creative person was literally a dream come true. It was really, really fun.
Yeah, I completely understand. Like, I definitely see where you're coming from, and like your work in Star Wars is still so good. But I'd
Thank
imagine
you.
that there was a bit of responsibility there because when you're working on a comic like Solo, you can't, you can't exactly say, okay, Han Solo has been a Twi'lek this whole time, or something like that. You can't exactly do something like that. So there's a bit of pressure around
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, although with that one, it was interesting, like having, because I read the script, and the script was a little bit different than the final movie that was released. But I really liked what they did, and I really liked, you know, the way they explored the character. I loved the world that they built around him. You know, like, you know, Kira and Woody Harrelson's character and all these. It felt like a lived-in world, and it felt like there was still like a little bit of time, you know, to explore something about his character. And you know, my editor on the book, Mark, was like, I want this to be like Full Metal Jacket meets Stripes, and I was like, well, those are two very, very different tones, but it felt like we had a little bit of creative license there to have some fun. I think it was harder for me writing Darth Vader, because like
Okay.
that's a character who has loomed so large, and not that Han Solo hasn't, but like the breath, the mask, you know, the
Oh yeah.
lightsaber. It's like subatomically, you know, part of who we are, you know, now culturally speaking. And I found that on that book, I would write dialogue for him so that the scene would make sense, and then I would get the art back and I would cut out all of his dialogue. Because when you really look back, you know, at like a lot of the Star Wars movies, he's not in the movies a lot, and he doesn't say a lot.
Yeah, I
He's
think
just
it's
this
15
incredible
minutes
presence.
or something.
Yeah,
I remember I
yeah,
saw
yeah.
something.
It's something really low, and he has such a presence, so that less is more with him. So a lot of times I would find myself, that one was way more intimidating because like so much of his story feels kind of locked in place. Although they found really great ways to tell more stories, obviously, about him. And also, like, I knew the title was called Target Vader, but I knew I wasn't going to get to kill Darth Vader. So I tried my hardest. I tried really hard. I've been trying to kill that guy since I was 3 years old.
Get him
But
one
you
day.
know, yeah. Well, I'll get, yeah, one of these days. I'm like Wile E. Coyote to his
It's
Roadrunner.
a matter of time, you know. He's
Um,
gonna slip up.
yeah, yeah.
Set out, set out a
He's gonna
mouse
make a
trap.
mistake.
He'll probably stand on it.
Yeah,
But in the
that's
film,
that's that's who.
yeah, sorry,
Sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, sorry. In the film, the most iconic scene where he said, "Luke, Misa is your father," and then like, oh my god, the credits rolled. It was unreal. I did.
Credits
That's.
roll.
I mean, that's obviously part of a very secretive new project. That's basically
Yeah,
canon.
yeah. So
Obviously, Jar Jar
I
Binks
shared
is
who my
Luke's father.
favorite. So is your favorite then? My two favorite were R2 and Max Rebo. Is your two favorite Jar Jar and who else?
Boba Fett, I'd say. Maybe they're
Boba
not
Fett.
my
Okay.
favorite. My favorites change every week. Sometimes I'll be like,
Yeah.
"Who's this dude?" You know, what's Panda Baba? He got his finger cut off or his hand chopped off. I love him. No, oh Greedo. I love Greedo as well.
Greedo's great. Greedo's
Yeah,
great.
me and
Greedo's a
I
great
interviewed
choice.
Ethan Sachs. We just talked about Greedo for like an hour. So what more do you need
He's
there?
he's a Greedo expert.
Yeah, and then like, oh my god, like, and then like, there's so many other cool ones. But like, I think so much of them have died. Some of the more obscure characters,
Yeah.
like I think Salacious B. Crumb got killed, which was screw you, Robbie. It wasn't your fault, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it was probably you.
I mean, if it was up to me, I would have killed him too. I do
Yeah,
love
he
that little
probably had a.
guy.
He was a little. He's a weird looking fella who did some, dodgy
They
things.
had early on when they opened up Star Wars Land out here, they had like a Salacious B. Crumb that you could get like that was on your shoulder, but like he was different color, and I was like, nah, I want Salacious. I want the real guy.
Yeah, could the real Salacious please stand up? But
Yeah,
yeah, no,
at least the
absolutely.
Salacious B cut.
But yeah, no. So coming off your work in Star Wars, you've gotten to do quite a bit of work from Marvel, which I absolutely
Yeah,
adore. You've gotten to do quite a bit on Spider-Man. You've included him,
yeah,
Spider-Man slash Deadpool. You got to write him in Silk and Spidey. Is that
yep,
those three? So I don't know which
yeah.
one to start first. I guess I'll get into his Spidey. So that was kind of a reimagining, right? And
Yeah, it was Nick Lowe who was the editor on the book, and then eventually Darren came over to edit the book. There was a title called Spidey that was part of the Electric Company way back in the day, and it was just sort of like we wanted to kind of harken back to those old kind of comics that were just one and dones. Like it was, here's his origin very briefly. Like we would start each issue with a one-page origin, and then he'd go on this adventure, and it was very much kind of harkening back to the other era. And it was also, I think it was, I can't remember if it was his first solo Marvel Cinematic Universe movie or his first appearance, but without like directly saying it was a Tom Holland version of Spider-Man, that's kind of what we were kind of trying to do, so that if you had younger viewers or older viewers that liked the character and wanted to be able to kind of jump in and see him in a more modern setting, that was a way to kind of do that. So we never really say what era we're in, but there's cell phones and internet jokes and more recent pop culture references. So it was an attempt to kind of exist outside of continuity and just sort of tell these universal stories. That was an awesome book to work on. It was all Andre and Nate and
Nate
Nick, the
Stockman
artist on it.
and Nick Bradshaw. That was
Yeah, and Nick
great choice.
and Andre, who's just a genius.
Andre
They're all
Leader, yeah.
geniuses. They're all like I was. It was embarrassment of riches of artists on that. Nick, who I knew from before, and Nate and Andre, who I didn't know. Like, I mean, Nate is brilliant, and he and I had so much fun working on that book.
Yeah,
And
he's
there's
fantastic.
there's so many gags in there that were his ideas. Like I was like, oh, we're gonna do one about Cap, and he was like, it's like, don't you think Cap would be annoyed with J. Jonah Jameson's Hitler mustache? And I was like, oh, that's how we're going to end the book. You know, like, that's great. And
Oh, because
so
yeah, he
he had,
shaved it off.
yeah, and he had all these just like great like little bits. And so sometimes he would send me a bit, and I would try to write either the story around it, or in that case, it was a way to kind of end the story. And it was like that with Andre and Nick too. And to be able to kind of just tell these sort of evergreen, you know, you can read them in any era, in any order, Spider-Man stories. That was, man, that book was a blast. It was so much fun.
Yeah, and you were so great, and you did a really great job writing for a teenager. You know, like Peter Parker, because it wasn't like, "Hello, how do you do, kid skateboards?" Am I right? You know, rad and all that. You actually did a very good job, so I have to commend you on that. But there was a few reimaginings in there, and like
Yeah.
of villains. One that I really liked was Lizard. Wasn't this you who kind of you made him an army medical, or what's a medic for the army, or was that another writer?
That might have been somebody else's idea. I don't, that one I'm not sure. But no, we did do
Yeah,
a lot of those
and there was a
things where
few
we were like, okay,
reimaginings in it, wasn't
yeah,
there?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, we did do that, and we wanted to kind of, again, like, we wanted to say that we were. I think the expression was always, we were sort of within continuity. We were continuity adjacent, but it was definitely, we wanted it to be. If we were reimagining things, we wanted it to be for the purposes of updating it to a more modern setting, and also so that we could explain it in the one issue, so you didn't have to like go to Wikipedia or read 500 comics, because, you know, for comic fans like us, you know, like you and I, we've read a ton
yeah.
of comics, and we know the lore, the history, we know where to kind of go. But for a lot of newer fans that might just see Tom Holland and think, oh, he's great, I want to read more about him. Like, if you hand them, you know, like, I don't know, like a classic Spider-Man, like if you hand them Superior Spider-Man, they're gonna be like, wait, what? Doc Ock is,
Doc
they're,
Ock,
they're
yeah.
gonna be confused. They're gonna be confused. And this was kind of a way to kind of say like, hey, here's the Spider-Man that you just saw on the big screen. If you like this, there's literally thousands of more stories, you know, for you to choose from. But we were kind of hoping it would be like a gateway to kind of, you know, bring new readers in. And I have to say, going to conventions, that's the book I probably signed the most. Was people come up with either the digest or the single issues, and it's usually a mom or a dad with their very young kid and saying like, oh, this was my kid's first book. He or she always saw me reading comics, and then I gave him this one, and it was away. And so like, that is so gratifying, you know, because as I, you know, we were all first readers once, you know, we were all little kids picking up a comic at the spinner rack at the pharmacy. So that was a really special book to work on.
Absolutely. And now I assume once conventions open up, everyone will be going up to you with issue one and be saying, "You killed film freak, screw you. Now sign this." Basically word for word, of course. And but yeah, no, so who
Yeah, I
was your
mean,
favorite? Because you got to include so many great characters in that story. There was Captain America, Iron Man, you know,
yeah.
MODOK, and like some other writers and all that, and like Black Panther. So Craven, I could go on for days. Like almost every major character, like Electro. So who was your favorite character that you got to include in that story?
Um, it's a tie.
Really? Between who?
Andre did an issue with Doctor Doom, and I love Doctor Doom. Again, you can't see it, but I have like a whole shelf of like 600 Doctor Doom figures. I love that guy,
Awesome.
and to be able to kind of do a fun story, but also like, Andre is he's very incredibly detail oriented in his work, but he never loses sight of the story. And we did this thing that takes place in a museum in New York, and I didn't script it this way, but he had this like just an amazing shot. It's one of my favorite panels of the book. And then he did another panel. I can't remember. I don't think it's in that one. It's like a cross section of Spider-Man getting knocked through walls, and I'm like Andre, if you ever sell that, please let me know. But so a tie between Doctor Doom, just because it was fun to write Doctor Doom, and he has a very brief cameo in an issue that Nate drew. My favorite is still Galactus, because he was on the cover of my first comic.
Yes.
And so there's a splash that we did that's an homage to that Fantastic Four issue 243 that Nate just absolutely destroyed. I mean, it's just a perfect. And he actually was kind enough to gift me that page, which hangs in my office. So
Awesome.
kind of kind of a tie between those two. Doctor Doom and Galactus just being sort of childhood favorites, and getting to play with the toys that you used to play with as a kid, and make it into an actual comic book is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they didn't let you use Condiment King, so you had to use the Relish Ravager, which was your new
Right.
character.
I did the Relish Ravager.
I'm
Is
acting like I came up with that on the spot, but I've had that in my head for years. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that creator-owned series. Like I'm acting like, oh, Relish Ravager, wouldn't that be funny? But I came up with that a while ago, so just let it
I
be
think
known.
I look. let it be known that you have that in your pocket, and I think that's a great Image comic that I would read every issue
I
of.
have to turn away the editors. They're always on me. Like, we want to buy this. I'm like, no, listen, come on. I can't. I
Yeah,
have too
you know
many
what?
things to be doing,
You release it in your own time. When it's ready, it's ready.
Yeah, I have to really get a scope on it because he's such a complex character. It's like
Oh, of
mustard or
course.
ketchup, and you have to get into his
Yeah,
head. So I go
yeah.
Alan Moore with it. I go into a cabin. I grow a big long beard. I make it super biblical, etc.,
Yeah,
etc.,
that's
and
good.
it goes
That's
on.
good.
But yeah, no. So another story with Spider-Man you got to work on, which was one of the best crossovers ever, Spider-Man slash Deadpool, and that
Oh
went
yeah.
on for about 50 issues. Your run on it, and then it got taken over, but it was about 50 issues, I'd say.
I think it was 50 issues total. I think I did 27 issues, something like that.
Wow,
It's the longest run I've had on an ongoing. Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
loads.
yeah.
I'd say so. That was 12 issues a year, right?
I think actually we double shipped for a little bit of it, but yeah, it was about 2.5 years of work. Yeah,
That's awesome.
getting to live in those maniacs' heads. It was a lot
Yeah.
of fun.
And like you're
It
working
was a lot of
Spider-Man
fun.
slash Deadpool is brilliant. I have a few of the issues upstairs. And but so what's it like to get to work on that? Because they're both two awesome characters, which you really did a great job writing on. So it's like to get to work on them.
It was a blast. I didn't really. So I grew up loving Spider-Man, but I didn't really honestly know much of Deadpool until Jerry Duggan started writing the book with Brian Posehn, and then eventually
Oh,
Jerry just kind of became the writer on the book. And Jerry's become a friend, and
Jerry
I think what
Duggan.
they did, and yeah, Jerry Duggan, yeah,
Oh, he's
lovely,
awesome.
wonderful guy, brilliant writer, and just a wonderful person,
Yeah, he's
and
brilliant.
actually a fantastic photographer as well.
Oh,
But
really?
I thought that he and Brian started, and then Jerry really kind of, I think, blossomed it. Like the problem I always found with Deadpool was like he felt like just like a merc with a mouth, and like I wasn't like I wasn't there when he first arrived, because I sort of missed some comics in the 90s because I was in college and I was broke. So I didn't have that same sort of like love for him. I loved the design and I loved how he looked, but I loved in Jerry's run like just the amount of humanity that they brought to his character. Like he wasn't just this funny guy. Like they brought a real kind of reality to him. I thought that was really really interesting. And then he actually did a run of Deadpool. It's one of my favorites, with Declan actually. I
Yeah.
can't remember what it's called, like Red, White, Black, and Blue, or something along those lines.
Yeah, with
But it's
Captain
just
America and Wolverine.
yeah, with
Yeah,
Cap,
we
yeah, and
touched
Wolverine,
on
and
that.
it's just awesome. It's a great run, and it's a great, again, kind of digging into it. So I went back and I finished Jerry's run when I was leading up to it, and then Nick Lowe, who was the editor on the book and put the book together at the beginning, he was out here in Los Angeles, and Chris Bichello was also at the time living out in Los Angeles, and so we're like, well, let's all meet up and talk about it. But where we went to meet up was actually Disneyland. So we
Awesome.
broke
Put it on
the
Marvel's bill.
first like yeah, of course. I mean, well, I think they got in because they're Disney employees. But yeah, we basically spent all day riding rides, sitting in a line, and I had a little notebook, and we just talked about, at that point I think we had one piece of art. Chris had done this cover with Deadpool and these like crazy looking sharks, and I was like, oh, I want those sharks to be characters in the book, and they eventually became characters in the book. But we broke probably the first, I would say, like 6 or 12, the backbone of what would become the 6 or 12 issues, in line for the Matterhorn, or the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And so it was very, I thought, in keeping with the sort of tone of the book, because it's a very silly book. You have two very funny characters, and
Yeah.
you obviously have
Yeah.
Deadpool, who is, breaking the fourth wall, and eventually I become a villain in the story, like
That was I
at
want to
the
touch
end,
on that, yeah.
which was not my idea. That was Nick's idea. He was like, "What if you were the bad guy?" And I was like, "That sounds insane. Let's do it." And we just had fun, because he's there. He's such an absurd character, and you from the title that this is going to be an absurd book. Like this is that wackiness should happen, and
Yeah.
so being able to work on that was fun. And then we did. Early on, I did a run with Scott Hepburn where we were kind of flashing forward to the future, where it was Old Man Spider-Man and Old Man Deadpool, and that was so much fun,
In a
to be able
nursing
to just
home
show,
or something, wasn't it?
yeah, in the nursing
Yeah, I
home,
love
yeah,
that.
yeah, to be able to show them as old. I think, yeah, this is an old cover from that one that Scott did. Like, he's got like his beard, and they're all like old fuddy-duddies, and we got
Awesome.
to create all these crazy alternate future versions of Marvel characters, and like there's a thing that's a giant thing, like he's a kaiju sized thing, and that was so much fun. And we really felt like what Joe and Ed had started with the book when it began was sort of this fun, absurd, but kind of personal. And we kind of wanted to kind of take that and kind of run with it. And so, yeah, it
Yeah.
was a blast working on that. And then, I got to work with my buddy Jim Toe, who's also a Michigan guy, and like I said, Scott Hepburn and
Matt
Chris.
Horick.
I mean, Chris. Yeah, Matt Horick, who's
He's
a
fantastic.
brilliant, lovely guy, and we had so much fun. I would just email him and I'd be like, "Well, who do you want to draw?" And he'd be like, "How about this?" And then we would just kind of had fun. And then Chris Bichello is like one of my all-time favorite artists. Like his Generation Next book, I have a giant omnibus of Age of Apocalypse over there, and I was looking at his work, and like, I just remember seeing his stuff early on, and to be able to work with someone I've been a fan with since I was a teenager was a huge dream come true. He's everything and more that you would want in a collaborator.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe when Relish Ravage showed up in that story. That was
I
icing
know.
on the cake,
He's
you know?
he was definitely. We have a lawsuit still pending about that because it's a
Yeah,
creator-owned story and it was a
it was.
Marvel book. But I'm sure
Yeah, his
we'll
name
work it
was
out.
technically Relish Ravager, bracket, not Condiment King, you know,
Right.
or just Relish Ravager with a silent Z, and then you could
Yeah.
basically use that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
assume that's how comics works, just
Yeah.
Iron Man or
I think
something.
that's right.
Yeah,
I'm not a lawyer, so
yeah, it's not my problem. I'll let the legal guys handle that. No dirt on my hands. But some crazy things happen in that. Like some stories,
yeah.
of course, here like Spider-Man died in that, and they were old and they were in a nursing home, and some other brilliant
Yeah.
stories. But another spider-focused character you got to work on was Silk, and your work
Yes.
on Silk was fantastic. That was a very personal story. So I was like to get to work on Silk.
Well, that was my entry into Marvel.
Oh,
Ellie Pyle she's still at Marvel, but on the TV side of things, she was an editor at the time, and I've been trying to break into comics forever, and I had done some work at DC years and years before, and it did not lead to me being on the cover of Wizard magazine like I thought it was going to. But as it turned out, she was a fan of Supernatural, and she knew and was working with a TV writer I know and a comic writer I know named Mike Costa. Mike Costa's roommate is a guy I know, Joe Henderson, who is now like a showrunner. He
creator of
co-showruns.
Lucifer and Shadecraft
Or,
with Lee
yeah,
Garbutt.
yeah,
Man,
yeah.
awesome.
Lovely guy, really, truly wonderful person. And he introduced us because she was like, "Oh, I love Supernatural," and he was like, "Oh, I know a Supernatural writer," and she knew some of the episodes that I had worked on, and we kind of struck up an email correspondence. And then she was like, "Hey, do you want to create a character for what would eventually become Spider-Verse?" And so I co-created a character named Lady Spider, who was sort of like if Downton Abbey had a spider character, that would be Lady Spider.
Awesome.
And she was sort of auditioning me for. She already knew that the Silk book was coming. Silk was co-created by Dan Slott and Humberto Ramos, and that book was amazing because it was when I first met Nick, who runs the Spider Office. We met, at like a top secret meeting at Comic Con, in San Diego, and I was like, oh wow, this is
With the
like,
trench
I
coat
feel
and
like,
just a little pamphlet.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
I just went dressed as Spider-Man. I went completely
that's what you
full
have to.
costume.
That's how you get a job. So you're
Yeah.
telling me if I want to work in comics,
Yeah.
go to Marvel offices dressed up as Spider-Man. Okay, got it.
I mean, it worked for me. It worked for me. That and I worked on Supernatural. So get a job on Supernatural. Get Supernatural back on the air. Work on Supernatural. Then dress up as Spider-Man.
Yeah,
But no, I
it's
sat and
easier than
talked
it
with him, and
looks.
it was great. It
Easier
is.
than
It's
it
much
looks.
easier.
All I have to do is walk
But
up
no,
and
it
say,
was.
I have an
Yeah,
idea.
just walk up. Yeah, walk up and say relish Ravager. But no, I loved working on that book, and working with Nick was a blast. And Ellie, she eventually had moved on, but for the first handful of issues before Devin came in, we really kind of talked a lot about exactly what you just said, is like, how can we tell a more personal story with this character? She was introduced in a massive event called Original Sin, and then she was really introduced in an even more massive event called Spider-Verse, and we were like, well, we can't match the scale of that externally because they're like event wide, line wide events, but can we match the scale internally and tell a more personal story about what would it be like if you were locked away and the world moved on without you? And it definitely felt like a more personal story. And I got to do I think 26 odd issues of that with Stacy and Tana and Irene and all these amazing artists. Ian Herring colored the whole thing. it was a really, really fun book to work on, and it's back. It's back. Maureen Gu
Yeah.
and her crew are working on it now, and it's terrific. It's really fun to see her back in the Marvel universe front and center.
And so is there a bit more freedom it costed because she's not like necessarily a huge character like Spider-Man or Deadpool. So if
Right.
you have her say, I like pancakes, no one's gonna say, no, she'd never say that. So did you feel a bit more
Right.
freedom? That was a weird,
um,
example. But was there a bit
yeah,
more
I'm sorry.
freedom?
I'm gonna try to grab my phone here a second. One
No
second.
problem. You
Sorry.
can, yeah, you can go. And
Yeah.
as you
One
can
second.
see here, yeah, that's no problem. Just while he's gonna go hang up because obviously I'm more important. This new book, The Suicide Squad. Go pick this up. I believe you can get issue 1 from your local comic book store. Issue 2, issue 3, issue 4 came out recently. Issue 5 comes out July 16th or 6th. So go pick that out. Some really big things are happening. So make sure you go get that. Look, I'm promoting your books. I'm too kind. No one else. You. Everyone make sure to go pick it up. It's a really great series. By the time this video is out publicly, there will be a review on my channel. Return of the Jedi. Oh, there. Is that your favorite Star Wars? Return is
No,
Return.
no. It's my favorite is A New Hope. You asked me about Silk. Yes,
Yeah.
it was great to be kind of. She was all kind of fresh now, and she had been locked away for 10 years. So that was really, it provided us with this opportunity to kind of create a world for her and launch her in a direction without
Yeah.
out a lot of encumbrance. So that was cool. Plus the Fantastic Four in it, which was great. I got to write the Fantastic Four.
Awesome. And Galactus. You got to write literally all the Fantastic Four and Galactus. And unfortunately, Relish Ravager, he's the bar condiment king. I'm kind enough to let you inevitably because you just have to pitch that to Marvel. You already have a 100-page series on your hands, and you can get that out in a week. I assume that's how comics works.
I think we should do it creator owned. That way you own the IP, and then when it becomes a movie, you can make your money off of that. Like don't give it away to the big two. That's too personal an idea. You got to hold on to the good ones.
Yeah, because I mean, it ends with the line, "The real Relish Ravager was the friends we made on the way." Of course, aren't we all a Relish Ravager?
It was the sandwiches we made along the way.
Yeah, no, that would be too cheesy to make it. No, that doesn't even work. I was trying to come up with a relish pun, but nothing comes off the tongue. Nothing works there. I can't.
So are you joke about it, but are you serious about wanting to create your own comics?
Yes, but not Relish Ravager. That's no money mess with you. Yeah, I think comics is kind of the bar, but like everyone wants to be a space astronaut cowboy at the same time. So I don't know if it's something I can actually achieve. But you see it a lot. So yeah, ideally that would be a dream to write comics. But I guess we'll just have to see.
Hey, you're starting at the right age and the right time. I wish I had started at your age. I got kind of started late, and you're taking it seriously, and seeking out people like John Ostrander or Declan Shalvey, like people who've been doing it and know what they're doing.
And you definitely know what you're doing, Robbie Thompson. So you have a fair bit, and you're incredibly kind to even agree to come on, and it genuinely does mean the world. Talk to me because this is one of the best interviews I've gotten to do. Yeah, so that this really does mean the world. But
my pleasure.
And I think there's only 2 more comics we need to touch on. Before we finish up, you also got to do quite a bit of work on Doctor Strange. That was Sorcerer Supreme, which was brilliant. What was it like to get to work on Doctor Strange or Stephen Strange, who was such a great character?
Oh, that was a lot of fun. So that was another one where there was a movie coming out. I think it was the first Doctor Strange, and again, it was not tied directly to the movie, but the idea was, hey, can we do something that's sort of in line, to sort of capitalize on the movie coming out? And that was when I first got to work with Javier Rodriguez, and Javier is like, I think, one of the best artists working in comics, and that's when I kind of changed my style as a writer too, because I hadn't worked with him yet, but I loved his work on the Spider-Woman book. And Dennis Hallam/Hopeless is a friend of mine, and I reached out to him and I was like, hey, what's it like working with Javier? And he was like, oh, it's a dream. And I was like, well, do you have any advice? And he's like, yeah, my advice is to get out of his way because he's a genius. And I had read at the time, because Jason Aaron was doing the flagship book with Chris Bichello, and Nick sent me some of Jason's script. And I think Jason's one of the best writers in comics. I think his stuff is always, fantastic. He's always taken big swings. But I was really fascinated with the style of the script that he wrote, which was, it was because he and Chris had a shorthand at that point. It would be like page 1 to 3, and it was almost written like a screenplay where it would be like description, dialogue, description, dialogue. Whereas usually it's like panel 1, big description, dialogue, panel 2, big description. And you could just tell he trusted Chris to kind of tell the story visually as Chris wants to do. And Chris is such a very specific artist.
Mm.
you kind of want to, capitalize on that. So with Javier, I reached out, and then I happened to be I was actually in a different country, but my wife and I were in Spain,
Oh,
and
awesome.
he lives in Spain as well. And so we met up in person, and we just kind of talked through what we wanted to do with the book. And so getting to work with him was just one of the best experiences I've ever had. Like, he is so brilliant. And there's a thing in like the first issue where it's like, Doctor Strange, travels through time magically. And I'm like, I don't know what that looks like, and then he created this incredible vista of like these giant floating heads, and Jordi Belair, who's an amazing colorist, did this incredible color work on it. And like, it was just a real feeling of everyone every creator on the book was really doing their own thing. And it really felt like, oh, this is how I want comics to be from now on. And
Definitely.
unless I'm asked to, that's kind of how I write still, is a little bit less panel this, panel that, unless if I'm asked to, that's fine, I'll do it. But it was a blast. And then as the book went on, Javier had other commitments, and then Nate Stockman, who I got to work with, at Spidey as well, he came over, and we had so much fun closing that book out. We did, a horizontal issue, for the at one point, and that was fun. And we did a choose your own adventure book. We really wanted the book to feel like magic, as cheesy as that might sound.
Yeah.
And so really that came from the artists. Like, they really pushed the book, and we got to create as a group a bunch of characters, one of whom, Kushala, is about to be in a mini series that Marvel has coming out.
No
And
way.
so it's really cool to see those characters living on in different stories and things like that. And who knows, maybe they'll wind up in a movie or a TV show down the road. But that was a blast to work on. It was really fun. And Strange is such an interesting character, and at that time, what was going on with him, and his powers, that Jason was working, it was just really cool to be able to kind of play in that universe. That's another example. I don't know why it is, but like, I did meet Jason, strangely enough, at Disneyland. We were at
Is that where you have all your meetings?
I guess so. It was a bunch of creators that had gone to Disneyland after Comic-Con, after San Diego Comic-Con. And that was the first time I met him in person. And I just started working on the book, and it was great to just be able to kind of talk shop with him. He's just a lovely person, and just, again, I think one of the best writers working.
Now I definitely want to get into comics just so I can go to Disneyland. I assume that's just how
I
everything.
mean, that's where all the meetings on the Marvel side of thing. I don't know where they meet on DC. I guess they go to not
You
very
just
far
at the top of a roller coaster as you're going by. You just hand the script over and they go down with it. That's basically it. But another
Yeah.
Marvel proper. Actually, if I had to describe your Doctor Strange book in one word beginning with S, I'd call it super. It was very good. But moving on, I'm messing. You got to work on Meet the Skrulls, and I really love that
Yeah.
book. I think you kind of had that, kind of 90s sitcom thing going for it, like, Meet the Robinsons or something like that,
Yeah.
like Family Matters. So did you really try and play with that? Like, it's a family of Skrulls.
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite thing I did at Marvel. It's maybe my favorite thing I've done, period. It was an original idea I had,
Oh,
and I
you
pitched
pitched it.
it years ago, and people liked it, but there wasn't really like a window for it. And
Yeah.
then, because the Captain Marvel movie was coming out, and again, I didn't know anything about the movie, but I knew that the Skrulls were in it. It felt like, oh, there's an opportunity to kind of maybe feature some Skrulls. And I love, that was a dream come true. Working on that
Fantastic.
book, everybody, like, the covers, the interior
Marcos
art,
Marcos
Marcus
Martin.
Smart, like,
Oh, he's so
Martin,
good.
like the greatest. There's nobody better cover, and yeah. And Nico was an artist who I've been following since Pride of Baghdad, and to get to collaborate with him and tell an original story in the Marvel universe that we actually got to revisit during the Road to Empire. It was really fun to get kind of revisit those characters. That was like the most fun I had. And yeah, we wanted to kind of evoke sort of that sort of that vibe of situational comedy, but really more in the through the lens of like modern shows like The Americans and things like that.
Yeah.
A family of that's sort of living a lie. And it just felt like a great way to kind of carve a corner out of the Marvel universe that maybe hadn't been carved out before. But yeah, that's my favorite thing I've probably from soup to I love all of them. But that one, because it was an original idea, and getting to build that up with Nico and Nick and everybody involved was. And you get Marcos Martin's covers, so they send you, like, he sends, like any cover artist, they'll send you like 4 or 5 ideas, and they're usually rough, you know, but all of his were like perfect. Like you wanted to
Oh.
pick all of them. You're like, can we just do 5 variants? Like every single one was, and sometimes because he was working so far ahead, he would only have like a log line description of what the story was. You know, like, oh, it's this, you know, but he would always find this a really cool way to evoke the story, the tone, the characters, all of that stuff. He's one of the best working in the business.
Yeah,
And
he came to Dublin to do a signing, but
oh
unfortunately I was
wow.
in England, and
Oh,
I was so angry at myself for not meeting him because like, and he gave out like free head sketches on the day, and
oh,
I almost felt sick. I was sitting there on a plane like, oh, the holiday sucks. Why can't I be meeting Marcos Martin? Um,
I had a chance to meet him, a similar situation, but we were hoping to spend more time in Spain, but we got like stuck in Germany, and so I missed our window to kind of hang out with him, which was a bummer
oh,
because
man.
he's just a lovely person to work with, but also just an outstanding artist, you know. And Nico as well. Like every single time I get the layouts from Nico, because he's an interesting artist, much like Javier Rodriguez. He puts the dialogue in so you can kind of see the layout, you know, and it's kind of roughly put in there. So anytime Nico stuff would come in, it was just a joy to see that comic come to life.
Yeah, and that Meet the Skrulls is a brilliant book. It's more of a family book. It's very personable, isn't it? Like it's
Yeah,
about family.
yeah,
And like, was it fun for you to write that aspect of, they're not from Earth, and so
yeah,
you have that insight, which you did a very good job writing for Skrulls, because they think they're on Earth. They're like, what's this? What do we do? Social norms, and they have to put on this kind of facade. But some of them kind of
yeah.
lean into being a human more as opposed to a Skrull. So yeah,
No, it was great, and you know, we talked about that a lot early on in the book. Was like, okay, these are aliens, but you know, they know what it's like to feel like an outsider. They know what it's like to feel different, and that felt like something that was very human. And then to your point, exactly what you just said, like here are these people that they are others and aliens, but now they find themselves, because they've been pretending to be humans, feeling like humans, and that the confusion that was creating for some of the characters just felt like just a rich opportunity to tell a family story and to tell a story that was about a family that had been broken by a trauma and trying to correct what had happened.
definitely. And like that book was so good. Ever make sure to go check that out. I believe there's a trade paperback you can get from
Yeah,
Marvel. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's
Still
such a
in
good
print.
book. That's a good thing to be doing. But yeah, it turns out one of them is Relish Ravager. I won't say
I'm sure.
it's all
I'm
of them.
sure.
That's headcanon, so it's basically true. But the last thing I want to touch on,
Yeah,
not only are you a comic book writer, you're also a TV writer. You've gotten to do quite a
yeah,
bit of work for TV. So did you make that like jump from TV into comics?
yeah. Well, it's funny. So when I started, I went to the University of Southern California out here in Los Angeles, and I
Oh,
started working in animation on the TV side of things. And everybody I knew in animation wanted to get into comics, and so did I. And so I started writing scripts, but I didn't have the money to actually make the books. And then I was working on a show called Human Target, based on the comic book Human Target. And my boss on the show, the guy who created it and adapted it, John Steinberg, he and one of the producers, Peter Johnson, had a good idea, because we had changed a lot in the adaptation, was why don't we get a comic book adaptation of the TV show, so it's somewhat more kosher with fans. And they actually brought in the legendary Len Wein to do
wow.
that. Len came into our office. He was amazing. He told us stories about editing Alan Moore and working on Watchmen. That was incredible. But there were backup stories in that.
Yeah.
And so I told Peter, I was like, because he was going to write a couple, and I was like, I'm going to murder you if you don't if you don't let me write these backups. So I wrote those backups, and incredibly, the first one was drawn by Chris Sprouse. Another one was
Wow.
drawn by the late great John Paul Leon. And
Oh,
then again, I thought my career in
fantastic.
comics had arrived, but I couldn't get any work after that. And so I continued my career as a TV writer. And so I think it was kind of working in tandem, but really ultimately it was working in TV that got me noticed in comics. Thankfully I worked on a show that an editor at Marvel liked, and we had randomly a friend in common. So yeah, it was. I would say it was probably done in tandem, but there are two fields that kind of overlap in a good way, because so much of both are about collaboration, and trusting your collaborators to say like, oh, okay, like I have this idea. Oh, hey, that's cool. What if we did this with it as well? And you kind of build it out together. It's just in TV, you're working with like 200 people, and in
Yeah.
comics, it's like 6, but it's still the same basic idea, which is we're all working in service of the story. We're all marching in this direction. Can we get the story where it needs to go together? And so that's why I think the transition is, I think, in both directions. If you're a comic person going into TV or a TV person going into comics, I think it's a little bit easier because you're being trained to collaborate in a good way.
Yeah, and that was so cool. And like you got to quite work on a little known show called Supernatural, which is pretty big. So
Sure.
it's fun for you to get to work on that because that went on for like
Oh,
12 seasons or something. So what is
it
it?
was on for 500 years, I think.
Yeah,
I
just
was on for
about.
200 of the 500. Yeah, I think it's 1,000. Yeah, it was on for 15 years. I was on there for 5 seasons. I just added this up the other day. I wrote 18 episodes of that show. It was a dream job. The guys that played the two main characters, Jensen and Jared, are
Yeah,
two of like the nicest guys you could ever work with.
they're awesome.
Misha, who played Castiel, or just a lovely guy. To have collaborators like that, that even after 500 episodes or whatever it was, that were still so invested and still so dedicated to telling the story was awesome. And it's also a show that, like, it was weird from the beginning, but as it got older, it got weirder. And to be able to do out of the box episodes, like, I wrote a musical episode, I wrote an
Yeah.
episode that took place in a car, like, to be able to take those bigger swings on a show that's predominantly a Monster of the Week show, um, was just a gift as a writer. I never got bored there. There was always like, oh, we're going to do a musical? That sounds crazy. I can't wait. Like, it
Yeah.
was always like a ton of fun. So yeah, it was a blast. I loved working on that show.
Yeah, and you got to add yourself in a Spider-Man slash Deadpool. Unfortunately, you didn't get to add yourself in any other things. You can just
No,
exist in everything. You're probably in the Suicide Squad somewhere.
I think actually, I don't think it's my Twitter banner anymore, but Nico actually put the two of us in Meet the Skrulls on I think it's the second or third to last page. If you see a nerdy guy in a baseball cap and a glasses, that's me, and sitting next to me is Nico. It was a nice little like
Wow.
homage. And then Nate, Nate put all of our names at one point in Spider-Man's webs and Spidey. I think that's another
That's
cameo I had.
awesome.
Sort of like, almost like, it's like you have to really squint to see it, but it's almost like graffiti art, because he made the webs really elaborate in this one splash. But yeah, I've had a few cameos, but not much like Spider-Man Deadpool, where I was the actual villain of the story.
That must have been pretty cool. And I imagine
It
in
was
new
great.
Suicide Squad, there's going to be a case file that says Robbie Thompson, aka Relish Ravager, you
Uh,
know, unknown. So he could somewhere be in the universe. Just
I'll see if I can put us, maybe there'll be a file that she's looking through, and one will have your name and one will have my name, so that we're
of course.
we're side by side.
And then just Relish Ravager, a big banner, obviously, because we have
Our
to do it on the
Ravager.
nose. We have to do it on the nose. But yeah, no, that'd be awesome. But yeah, no. So another question. Sorry to come back to Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Is there a bit more responsibility, like, or is it harder working on the team book with all these different characters? Because you have to say, okay, I haven't given Colbert enough time in this issue, or oh, I
No.
haven't mentioned Talon, as opposed to doing a book about Spider-Man, who you can just do about Spider-Man. So is there? Because I also asked this to Rob and John. Is it kind of harder when it comes to this?
It 100% is. It's something that comes up on the TV side of things too. You'll have a scene with like 10 people and you realize you only wrote dialogue for 2 of them. And so like the actors are just like, what do I do? Do I just stand over here? Or like, actually, I mentioned this recently. When I first got the job working on Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme, that was the first team book I had done. And I had never done a team book. And I was working in a writer's room for something non-comic related, but I signed an NDA, so I can't say what it was. But there was a bunch of comic book writers in it, and one of them was Mark Waid. And
No
Mark
way.
has written literally thousands of comic books.
Yeah,
You know,
Daredevil. Oh, so
yeah,
much
he's
more.
done it all. Like, there's not a character he hasn't touched. And I knew that he had written some great team books, and so I asked him. I was like, "Hey, Mark, like, I'm about to do this team book. I've never done it. Do you have any advice?" And he gave me very practical advice that sounds kind of like maybe like obvious, but it really helped me, which was, he's like, put every character, their alias and their power set, and like, like if they have like a quirk, like he's sarcastic or he loves condiments or whatever, and you put it on a note card and then put it up on your wall, so that every single time you're approaching a scene, you're like, okay, well, did Culebra say something funny, or did Culebra punch through a wall, or did Culebra, react to when Talon said something. Did Talon say who? Did Talon,
Yeah.
kill somebody? And it's funny, I use that to this day, and that was years and years ago. But it was just really great, practical, actionable advice where you could kind of just say, okay, yes, I can just execute this, in a way that I'm not underthinking it, and that way everybody kind of gets a moment. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you'll have a character in a scene that you realize afterwards, like you see the artwork and you go, oh, okay, I need to throw a line to Branch or to to Peacemaker, because they're in the background, and you're like, oh, I should probably have them saying something. But it was just great advice. And so yeah, it's definitely easier when it's just it's Silk and it's just Cindy Moon talking to herself in the captions, and all the scenes are with her, so there's nothing privileged, so you have to break point of view. When you have a lot of characters, you're breaking different points of view, and that can be a challenge. But yeah, Mark gave me great advice, and I follow it to this day.
Yeah, and Branch is definitely my top 3 favorite Suicide Squad characters.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, I just tuned out after a while, and I get no money messing with you. I just tuned out, and I was like, yeah, okay, wait for him to be quiet. No money messing. Yeah, Mark Waid is an absolute star.
Yeah,
But
legend.
yeah. So now my last Suicide Squad question before I get to my last 3 questions. If you could add an additional member to the Suicide Squad in the history of comic books or movies, who's your dream member to add?
Okay. I can't answer that because it's a spoiler, because I got to add my dream member.
No
He is
way.
featured on he is featured on the cover of issue 7, the greatest cover in the history of DC Comics.
You're hyping
So
me up, man. I can't wait to see that.
when that drops in a couple weeks, we can discuss it then.
Yeah.
Outside of that character, funnily enough, like, there's some characters from like the 80s that I would love to, they're not necessarily bad guys, but they were just weird characters that I love, like Blue Devil, and there's every single rogue from the Flash's Rogue Gallery, I think is great.
Yeah, and some of the more obscure characters like Music Maestro and all
Yeah.
these just weird people.
Yeah, exactly. Like people that you wouldn't imagine having a cool moment in a movie, having a cool moment. But to be honest with you, my dream has come true. It's issue 7 cover. You'll see he becomes a member of the squad. Sorry, that's a spoiler. It's pretty amazing. I'm very excited about it.
Awesome, man. You have my hopes up there. But yeah, that's really great. So my last 3 questions. Uh, if you could do a dream comic with any comic book character, who's a character you'd like to write for but you haven't gotten to yet?
That I haven't gotten to write yet? Boy, that's a tough one. I've gotten to
Maybe
write
like
quite a few.
a Galactus miniseries.
I mean, look, my dream would be to do, I wouldn't want to do a long run on it, because I don't know if I'm designed for these longer runs. That's a lot of work, and I'm lazy. But I would love to do like a maxi series Fantastic Four book. That would be a dream.
Yeah.
Do something like, whether it was with, one of my buddies like Javier Rodriguez, or somebody, just I love those characters. They obviously were my entree into the Marvel universe. I literally put them in Silk because I figured we'd get canceled after 4 issues. So I was like, they're in issue 4. And I put Galactus in it for no reason, because I was like, well, this is my only shot at it. But I love stories that, I mean, you touched on it before with Meet the Skrulls. I like stories that are about families, even if it's not biological family, like the families that we all make from our friends and all these other different things. Like the Fantastic Four to me is such a great, I love the adventures, I love the negative zone, I love all of it, and I love Galactus, but I love the fact that it was always about a family trying to look out for one another. I'm from a close family, and I think wherever you find your family, like those are the people that you kind of go to the mat for. So yeah, that would be the dream, to do like I wouldn't want to do like a 500 issue run or something like that, but like to do a really just tight, 12 issue or 6 issue, series would be incredible. That'd be the
Yeah,
dream.
you'd definitely be good for that. And then
Marvel, if you're listening, call us. We'll work on
yeah,
it.
of course. And a Relish Ravager, of course, appears in it
Yeah.
just because.
I mean, that's the villain.
Yeah, and obviously he's more intimidating than Galactus and Mole Man and all these very credible threats. Yeah, Galactus may eat worlds, but does he eat ketchup?
No,
on its own?
we don't know.
Like,
We don't know.
Does he just
Maybe
like
we
take
find
it?
out.
Yeah,
Maybe we find out.
that's where they team up. You
Maybe
obviously
he becomes a herald of Galactus, and
yeah,
that way,
condiments on the worlds. You can't just
Yeah.
eat them. He gets bored after a while. Like, oh yay,
Yeah.
another world. You see, we've
We gotta
already
spice this up a little.
Yeah, the airtight plot. No, that's Spice Man, who's a different character, you know?
Right.
Don't get it tied up, you know? I was trying to come
Yeah.
up with a name for, I guess, Spice. No, there's nothing there for him. There's nothing, you can't come up with a name for him. You just call him Spice or something. But yeah, no, so before I ask my last two questions, everyone, Suicide Squad is out now. It's worked on by some really talented people here. Pick up issue 4 at local comic book store. Issue 5 comes out next month, July.
I think so.
16th,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
July 6th or 16th or something like that. It's working by some fantastic people. I absolutely love that. I'll be dropping a review soon. But yeah, so my last two questions. Have you noticed improvement as a writer? Do you look back at some of your earlier work and think, oh, I can't believe I've done that, or oh, I should have done this, or oh, I could have done that?
Oh yeah. Sometimes page by page. Particularly on the comic side, because so much of comics, I think, is trying to find that balance where you really are collaborating with everybody. And that's my opinion. I know some people are writers who like they put down every single detail, and I love those books and I love that kind of writing too. But I think as I've gotten older and more experienced, I find that the more and more I can trust my partners to tell the story with me, and to be more transparent myself as a writer, the better I've become, the better the stories have become. And again, I think that's why Meet the Skrulls for me was my favorite. It was something, an idea that I had a long time ago, but then I got to develop with Nick and Kathleen at Marvel, and then develop with Nico, and then Marcos came in and did his thing, and like I really felt like we were all working towards a story together. And I think early on, you kind of you want to put your stamp on things a little bit more, and so like, oh no, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, which is fine. Again, there's something to that, but I found that I've gotten, me personally, better work done from my own stuff, by trusting my collaborators and being more open. So yeah, absolutely, and I hope to keep improving. I still got a long way to go.
No way, man. Your work is so good. But yeah, no. So my last and final question. I'm so sorry I've taken up so much of your time.
Of course.
If anyone's looking to get into comics, what advice would you have for them or anything like that, or become a writer such as yourself? A big famous one that goes to Disneyland, of course.
Goes to Disneyland all the time, apparently. I just went 2 weeks ago.
Awesome.
I think it depends. Look, I think ultimately it boils down to the same thing, especially in the era that we're living in, where you can, make movies on your phone and make comics, as PDFs and put them online. I think the best advice I can give people, young creators, is to just find a way to make something, and don't worry about it being perfect. If Start small. Don't write your 12 issue Watchmen. Write a 12-page story, write a 6-page story, write a 2-page story, write something that has a beginning, middle, and end. 2000, was it 2000 AD, the publisher, like the way they do it, like they start their writers off is you have to tell, I think it's a story in 4 pages. And
Yeah.
it's a great exercise, because it's like, can you show that you have a voice? Can you show that you can do characterization? Can you show that you can do plot development? Can you show that you have a twist? It's really challenging. And when you go back and look at like old episodes of the Twilight Zone or old EC comics, where like it was all like these stories told in a very short amount of time, I think it's just great practice. I think the mistake a lot of young writers make, and I'm saying this as a former young writer a long time
Yeah.
ago when I started, is you just want it to be perfect, and it's never going to be perfect. You're just going to make it, and then you're going to be like, oh, I could do this different. I mean, to the point of your last question, like if you want to keep growing as an artist, you're going to keep improving, and the best way to do that is to put something out there and get feedback. And our mutual friend Declan has been pushing me for years to do a creator-owned book, and that's what I'm working on now with my buddy Owen. And it's been great,
Awesome.
because like we're serving 2 audience members right now, him and me. Like that's it. And so we're pushing ourselves, and I'm pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And yeah, I want it to be perfect. I want it to be this, it's like a 66-page graphic novella, but I'm sure there'll be things that I'm going to need to change and improve, and so on and so forth. But just the act of making something is so exciting, even as somebody who's made comics for the big 2. And that would be my advice to people, is as you're starting out, like don't worry about it being perfect, especially if you're a writer. It lives in your head for so long, and then you put it down and you're like, ugh, it doesn't look like it was in my head. Don't worry about that. Just make the thing. Finish. If you're a writer, finish the script. If you want to get into comics, make the comic. Just make it. Don't make the big swing and do like a 32-page whatever. Do a 4-page thing. See if it works. See if you like it. I have plenty of friends who get into it and they're like, this is really hard, or I don't like this. I'm like, well, then now you
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing this. It should be fun. At the end of the day, these are all jobs, and like anything else, there's hard work to be done. but the joy of it, the joy that you feel reading should be at some level the joy you feel in creating. It's not always going to be there. So there's going to be times when it's like 2 in the morning and you're like, oh geez, I got to do a lettering pass and I'm tired, and it's just a job, right? But that initial kernel of that idea, or you get a piece of art in and it's amazing, that's the stuff that you got to kind of remind yourself of. So don't make it perfect, just make it, and make whatever the thing is. If you're a writer, finish the script. If it's for a movie, try to write a short film and make it. Shoot it on your iPhone. Shoot it with your laptop. Like the stuff that you guys have access to versus when I was a kid in the 1800s is so much more exciting. And you can make a comic, very much more easier now that it's become much more democratic and in a good way. So yeah, I would just say don't worry about it being perfect and just finish it, make it, and hit the mark that you set for yourself. Like don't go make Watchmen. You'll get there. Don't go make the Dark Knight. Go make your 4-page comic, your 6-page comic, or whatever it is, and see if you enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I don't think we could end on a better note. Robbie, thank you so much. I'll talk to you a little bit after the recording. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been such a pleasure. This has been unreal. I'm so honored you take the time. And thanks.
I'm honored you asked me.
And yet, also shout out to Declan. You just brought up there, brilliant artist. I just heard his name. But no, thank you. It's been such a pleasure. Everyone go pick up Suicide Squad. You don't know what you're missing. It's just, and I'm not just saying this, it's genuinely some of the best comics I've seen. Definitely this year. It's just so good. Issue 5 comes out soon. We're going to be introduced to Bloodsport. Go check it out. But yeah, before we finish up, are you on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything like that?
I'm on Twitter occasionally. R Thompson 1138 is me. You can find me there occasionally. And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Everyone make sure to go check him out. Go check out all of his work. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. And as always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Go donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. They're building for that down in the description. But yeah, thank you again. And Robbie, thank you so much. It's been unreal. And I'll talk to you a little bit here. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.